Hi there, it's Scott here. Welcome to an episode of Scott Stuff. Now in this episode I'm going to be talking about a board game. I'm going to be talking about Fluch der Mumie. It's a German game put out by Ravensburger. And that's why I'm not covering it on Board Games with Scott. It's not that it's a great game, it's that it's only available by mail ordering it overseas. And on Board Games with Scott, I try to cover games that are readily available. But this is a great new game that's a good family game. It's cooperative. Well, it's one player against everyone else, so mostly cooperative, but also kind of competitive. But it's very clever because the board is designed to stand up, like this. This is the way you play the game. One player plays the role of the mummy and sits behind the board on this side, which, by the way, looks exactly like the other side. And the rest of the players gather around one side, all the adventurers. Now, what's going on in the game is, on the map, as you can see, there are a number of artifacts, and you're heading into the mummy's tomb to find the artifacts. Each player is going to get some cards that show pictures of the artifacts. Now it's kind of like Transamerica, because if you look, then you've got all of the blue artifacts in this corner, all of the yellow artifacts in this corner, you've got green ones and red ones and white ones. It's too bad that they used yellow and white, because actually those two things get a little confusing to players. But anyway, what you're trying to do on your turn is move around and discover the artifacts. And so your piece is represented by a magnet, and the board is broken up into squares, as you can see. So on your turn, you're going to move a number of spaces around the corridor trying to get artifacts. Now, the mummy who sits on the other side can see nothing but his own piece. And so here's the cool part. So on the mummy's turn, the mummy's going to move looking for the adventurers. Ooh, so the adventurers can watch the mummy creepily moving down the corridors. And it's kind of spooky, actually, as you see the mummy and you wonder, is he going to get me? Is he going to get me? And all the mummy sees is the mummy's just moving this fairly large piece. Now, if the mummy comes across and hits one of the adventurers, he can tell, because when he gets close, it goes hook and captures him, and then that adventurer gets sent back to the mummy's tomb and must head out again trying to get stuff. What's going on in the game is each player has 3 lives, and every time the mummy kills a player, they get to take one of their lives, and if the mummy gets a number of lives based upon the number of players, the mummy wins. Otherwise, the first player to get all 5 of the artifacts wins. So again, you're going to end up with 1 artifact in each of the areas of the board. You have to move there, end your move there, announce you are there, say, I am on this space, so the mummy knows where you are for a turn, and then get all 5 artifacts, and you win. So it's a bit cooperative, because if as a group the players toss each other to the mummy too frequently, well, then the mummy's going to get enough lives to win the game. But the players are competing because only one of them can win. So the mummy needs to go after the player who's doing the best, because if any one player gets all 5 of their things, then that player wins. So it's an interesting balance. Now, the way the turns go is there are a number of dice, 5 dice, and the dice have numbers, arrows, and mummies. And so on your turn, you roll the 5 dice, and you're going to get to move the value on one of the dice. So the dice go from 1 to 4, and an arrow. The arrow means you move as far as you would like on one hallway, all the way till you hit a wall. Now, you can never actually hit the mummy. You can never hit another player's piece. You can never cross another player's piece. So one thing that can happen is someone can get trapped. The mummy can trap people. Other players can trap people, and that's going to happen during the game. If you roll the mummy symbol on the dice, dun dun dun, then that die is locked out. You're not able to use it anymore, and that's put aside. Now, what will happen is, after all the players have a turn, they'll roll the dice, they'll choose one of the numbers to move. If they don't like any of the numbers, they can re-roll the dice, but they're risking, because every mummy symbol takes that die out of play. On the mummy's turn, the mummy rolls a die, and it's a fairly small die. It only goes from 1 to 3, but he gets to add 1 for each die that's locked on the mummy side. Now, the other option the players have is at the start of their turn, they can choose to reset the dice, meaning they can let the mummy take a free move. The mummy will get to move 1 for each locked die, and then the player gets all 5 dice again to roll. And so at some point, the players are going to have to do that. If a player ends up rolling the dice and ends up having only mummies that they rolled, plus all the locked dice are mummies, then the mummy immediately gets to move 5, 1 for each locked die, but then that player loses their turn and the next player gets to go with all 5 dice. So there are times where you're going to have to let the mummy go to reset the dice, and that's where things can get really dicey. Get it? Anyway, this is a cool game. I've enjoyed it with kids and adults playing together. I've enjoyed it with just adults. I've enjoyed it where I have had a bunch of kids on the other side. It's fun because there's different skills you're using. If you're on the side of the mummy, you're having to use deduction. You get to find out how many spaces each player moves, but you don't know which direction they're going. Unless, of course, they're stupid and they say, I'm going to move over here. No, I'm going to move over here, which actually you can use to fool the mummy player as well. The players have to balance this cooperation competition, which is clever. So I hope this comes out in the US. I do think this is going to be a good candidate for the German Game of the Year because it's a great family game. It's very clever. It's fun to play. It's easy to learn. And I'm still engaged with this game, even though I've played it 10 or 12 times. I still have fun with it. So if you look, you can get it, Fluch der Mumie. It does come with no English rules. You'll have to go into Board Game Geek to download them, but it's a simple game. There's no text on any of the pieces, so once you know how to play, it's easy to get into. So I recommend checking out this game. Bye-bye.